Good morning, class. Well, we're on to week 2, and we're going to do the crunch the numbers for chapters 3, 4, and 5. This is your flash in 5, although it may take us a little bit longer because there are quite a few items in these 3 weeks. So I want to start on page 74 in your textbook, and we are looking at cost of longevity and merit pay. And we're going to work through a couple of problems to see what the difference is and hopefully to get a conceptual view of what longevity versus merit pay looks like. As you're going through this, remember that I'm an accountant. I don't expect you to be an accountant, but as an HR professional, you do need to know what the numbers mean and what these things, how these things affect different people, because those are questions that you will have to deal with. I've been all the way up to a chief financial officer, but I can tell you that I began as a job accountant and went into working payroll and job costs and things to that matter. I did payroll for many years, and now having my own tax firm for 22 years, I actually have about 12 clients that I do weekly payroll for. So I understand the payroll system and what the different things mean, but you need to know that even if you're not the accountant in the game, because the more you know, the more power you have when it comes to business. So under the merit pay system, we want to calculate Annie's salary based on 7% annual increase through the year 2020. For John, apply a 3% annual increase. What are their adjusted salaries for the year? If their salaries in 2015 are $50,000 and $35,000, then what we need to do is we need to look at what they're going to be going forward. I'm a table person. Anytime I can stick something into a table, I do it. I actually love Excel. If you're not great with Excel, I have a couple of videos out there that you're welcome to ask for, and I will certainly get you a link sent to Excel 1, 2, and 3, which go over a little bit about Excel. But I think Excel helps whenever you're doing anything that has to do with calculations. And the reason that I say that is it just makes it so much easier rather than using a calculator and typing the numbers in. And also if something changes, you can quickly make those changes. So in this case, I put a little table together, 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 2020. And I started with the $50,000 in 2015. I multiplied that by 1.07. Now remember, anytime that you want to find out how much of an increase and you want to know that total amount, you need to multiply it by itself, that's the 1, and the percentage. So 1.07 will give you the amount that it will be with 7% increase on $50,000. And I come up with 53,500. I'm going to do the same for John, where I do 35,000 times 1.05, and I come up with his 36,050. Now remember, the next step in this process is going to be to take that 53,500, multiply it by 1.07, and you'd continue to do this throughout the table. So once you have your table done, you're able to go down and take a look at the next question. Now your next question says, let's assume that both employees have reached the maximum pay rate for their jobs in 2015. Well, take a look at what maximum pay rate means. Maximum pay rate means there are jobs that, you're not going to get paid $100,000 to be a secretary. It's just not going to happen in 99.9% of the time. So I'm sure there's $100,000 secretaries out there, but so in this case, we're saying their jobs are maxing out on them. They're getting to the point where they've been there too long, and they started at a good pay, and each year they get that little bit of increase, and now they're at a point where what they're making for their job is not actually comparable in the marketplace because they make too much. So under a longevity pay system, the employee receives an annual payment that is not added into base pay. And this is what happens with a lot of companies is they make the decision that, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of a pay as a longevity pay, but that's not going to be part of your base pay. So at the end of 2020, their base pay will remain the same, which is $50,000 and $35,000. But for each year, they would get a longevity pay. So let's say our longevity pay for the year is going to be 5%. So we would take the $50,000 and we would multiply it by 0.05. That will tell us, now you have to understand that what the question is asking in this case is it wants to know how much are they getting. Now if they were asking you to say what is their total pay, then you would be able to do the $50,000 and you would be able to multiply that by 1.05. And that would give you the same thing. It would give you the total amount of their base pay plus the amount of their longevity addition. Under a merit pay system scenario, let's assume the goal is to provide Annie and John with the same annual pay increase as measured in dollars, just for 2016. It's been determined that Annie's annual increase will be 5%. What should the rate be for John after we apply this amount? So Annie's increase was 5%, so she got that $2,500. So her new salary is $52,500, exactly what we did up here. To give John the same $2,500 increase to his $35,000 base salary, he'd receive a 7.14% increase. So his new salary is going to only be the $35,000 plus the $2,500. But when we come up with the calculation, when we take the new salary over the old salary, we see that it's itself 0.7142. So it's actually a 7.14% increase. So those are like little games with the numbers that you're playing there to see, okay, if I'm giving them both the same dollar amount, what's the difference in the increase? And it's funny how in the working world, this can certainly come back and bite you. And I only say that because it is actually one of those things. People will say, oh, I got a cost of living plus merit pay of 7.14%. And Annie's going to say, well, I only got 5%. What did I do that I only received 5%? Whereas a lot of times in companies, the full details aren't disclosed, so it's that water cooler conversation. So a lot of times companies will make sure that they put it out there in the grapevine world that everybody is getting a set amount or everyone is getting a set percentage. So that's usually how that happens. And anytime you think that your employees are not sharing how much they make, you definitely don't know employees because they are having those conversations. And so you want to make sure that however it's dealt with, you make sure that you're giving them enough information to so they know that they're not being gypped. So on chapter 4, which I don't believe these are the correct numbers that we're working with in chapter 4, but when I brought them over, oh yeah, they were. So what you want to do in chapter 4 is now we're looking at what happens when you have an organization that is actually working on piecemeal. So what we do, again, I'm a huge chart fan, so I took a little chart, put it together. I said, okay, hour, number of garments, incentive pay, and then total pay per hour. So I'm able to easily calculate this across. If the number of garments that they do is above the standard, so they do 10 extras, I'm going to multiply that 10 times 0.75. I get $7.50. The $4.50 that they start with as a base plus the 7.50 is going to give me $12. I'm going to do that all the way down. You'll see the next one they did nothing over, so they got no incentive pay, so they ended up with a total pay of $4.50 an hour. The total pay for the shift is just adding these totals up, so those added up together comes to $64.50. How many dollars did the garment workers earn in incentive pay? Just add up the column with incentive pay. Now, if I still had this in Excel, what I would do is I would do an at sum and come up with the sum of those items. I did put it into Word as I know that not everyone is an Excel genius, and I don't want to challenge you with that if that's not where you are, but I do, again, suggest that you take, whether it's mine or if it's just going to YouTube and watching some Excel videos on how to work in Excel. Excel is the HR person's gold mine. You can do so much for so little time in Excel. So make sure you take a look at that. And then it says on the following day, the garment worker completed a 6-hour shift but did not exceed the standard at any time during his shift. So how much did he earn? 6 hours times $4.50 per hour means he only earned $27 for that shift. Many companies that have garments or piecemeal things to that matter, they work with this above the standard, you get paid a different amount. And that's kind of the way, in an industry where there's a lot of sales going on or there's a lot of touching of different items, it may work out best for the company and for the employee, because the hard worker is going to certainly get more money than the guy that stands around chatting all day. So let's talk about training budget costs. Now this is in chapter 5, we're looking at the training budget. So in chapter 5, they give us some items. They tell us that we have a training program, and our budget has developmental costs, which is salary and benefits of personnel and equipment, of $30,000. I'm on chapter 5, page 116. Direct implementation costs, so that's, the training materials, technology costs, facilities, that's 12,500. Indirect implementation costs, so that's overhead, general and administrative, 95,000. Compensation for employees while in training is 240,000. And lost productivity or cost of backfilling positions during training is 200,000. Everything that it takes to get that person from not trained to trained, that includes filling in their spot while they're gone, you would include in this training budget. So our budget is going to be $577,500. So let's assume that 100 employees will participate in this training. What's the average training cost per employee? If you divide what we just came up with by the 100,000 or by the 100 employees, your average training cost is $5,775. So that's pretty easy little math problem there, just to get you to look at per employee versus the total. Employee salaries are based on an hourly rate of $20 an hour, and there's 100 employees receiving training. Based on the total compensation for employees while in training, how many hours does each employee spend in training? So the total compensation is $240,000. The cost of 1 hour of training for 100 employees, so we have our 100 employees multiplied by our $20 an hour, we get $2,000. If we take the 240 and we divide it by the 2,000, we get 120 hours each employee is spending in training. So this just makes you bring it down to either a per hour, per cost. A lot of times when you're handed your HR budget and you'll look at it, it's in big dollar amounts, and you can sit there and you can look at that and go, okay, I have enough money for the year. Sure, absolutely, without a problem. But then you start to get to these numbers and you start to look at them a little bit deeper and you say, well, okay, I'm looking at some of this stuff, but some numbers I might need more for. And that's one of those things that you really want to take a look at when you are looking at your budget is what's the most important, bringing it down to the total hours, bringing it down to the total cost per hour, the number of employees. Work those numbers so that you know where you're at. So that's the end. I know that we definitely went over our Flash at 5, but with 3 chapters it would have been pretty close to impossible. Hopefully this has helped you, and when you go into my lab, you'll be able to do your crunch the numbers. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you on the boards.